Good morning, everybody. I'm Antonino Maggiore. I'm the ambassador of Italy to Zambia, and I'm very glad to open today's event. I would like to start by thanking the special guests that we have for this first introductory session. I would like to express my thanks to the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Italy, Honorable Emanuela Del Re, to Honorable Matthew Nkuwa, the Minister of Energy of Zambia, to Honorable Alexander Chiteme, Minister of National Development and Planning of Zambia, to His Excellency Jacek Jankowski, Ambassador of the European Union to Zambia and COMESA. Guests are here. The honorable ministers from Zambia are here at the Zambia Italian Cultural Center. Our Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs will connect digitally, because this, as you know, is a webinar which will be developed digitally, but also physically, here at the Zambia Italian Cultural Center of Lusaka. I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to Rest for Africa. Rest for Africa is a partner of the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and of our embassy. I would like to thank very much Secretary General Roberto Vigotti, Dr. Passero and his team for the tremendous job that they did together with the embassy to organize this event. Today's webinar has two objectives, and these two objectives are interconnected and interlinked between them. The first is that we will learn more about the challenges of climate change in Zambia and the opportunities that are there to tackle climate change using renewable energies. And this we will learn more thanks to the interventions of the ministers and the other guests, and also thanks to the presentation of a joint research carried out by the research center called CESI on behalf of Rest for Africa and jointly with the Ministry of Energy of Zambia. I was very impressed learning more of this research to discover that through developing the renewable energies, we can increase the production of energy in Zambia in an incredible way. We can produce, thanks to solar energy and wind energy, up to 3,800 megawatts by 2030. So if we consider that the energy gap of Zambia is estimated in around 810 megawatts, it's clear that with this improvement, Zambia can not only fill the gap of the necessary energy that is necessary for the country, but can even become an exporter of energy, taking advantage of its geographical position in the region. So this is the first objective of our event today. The second, and we will develop this in the second section, is the focus on the support, and especially the financial support that the international organizations and key players like the European Union, the World Bank, but also private initiatives like Renew Africa Finance can provide to support the activities of the companies. Zambian and Italian companies can rely on the support and especially the financial support to develop their project in Zambia. I would like to add that today's webinar is a very significant event because marks the restart of our activities in the economic sector. We never stop, but outreaching, gathering, using the new technology in the new normal, in the situation that we have. And this event today will serve also to prepare a broader conference on climate change and renewable energies that we are preparing again together with our friends of Rest for Africa. It will be a conference that we will host here in Lusaka physically, and we will invite also companies so that the companies can have business-to-business meetings. And for that event, of course, we are already working, and I hope that many companies, both Italian and Zambian, are already following us today, because also in this time, the embassy is eager and ready to provide support so that the companies can have a dialogue, cooperate, and develop their project. I will conclude by saying that climate change and renewable energy is the cornerstone of the bilateral cooperation between Italy and Zambia. In view of the Italian G20 presidency, Italy will hold the G20 presidency in 2021 and will put at the center of its presidency 3 P's: planet, people, and prosperity. And also in view of the co-presidency that Italy will have in 2021 of COP26, the International Conference on Environment. This is all I wanted to say. I thank again all the participants, and I wish all a very fruitful work today and very productive discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. On behalf of the Rest for Africa Foundation, I can only appreciate what you said. It's a pleasure to be back in Zambia, even though through a video. But I see many people have the time now. Finally, we are recovering from the COVID crisis. Coming back to Zambia, yes, next year we'll probably come there physically, and certainly many of our companies who are eager to invest, to co-invest in Africa will be there. Just let me underline, because you already mentioned the two topics, that those topics were chosen together by the Zambia government, the Zambia institution, and the Rest for Africa members and the Rest for Africa staff. So once again, this kind of webinar, it defines and highlights the result of common work. And as all our webinar, we always produce something. We do webinar not to talk only, but today we are going to present also in the first part the new study done together with the NS Foundation on the integration of variable resources in Zambia. I think this is a peculiarity of the Rest for Africa. Every country we go, from Algeria to Ethiopia, Kenya, Zambia, and now South Africa, we do provide this interesting view. How come the scenario the government proposed can really fit in the energy system of the country in this 2030, 2040. I think it is so important because so much is heard about renewable energy sources, you know, wind versus solar versus geothermal, and very little is talk about integration in the grid. It's like talking about which car am I going to buy, and I don't know if there are roads or less. I think Africa needs equally emphasis on generation, clean generation, but also emphasis on grid and infrastructure. So my pleasure to be here, and of course, to make the event a lucky one, we ask our colleague and our distinguished journalist and media professional, Joy Mira, who has been accompanying us in many of our events, to start and run the events. I'm here to listen and to learn. Thank you. Joy, the floor is to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roberto Vigotti. And like you heard, my name is Joy Bira. I'm a media personality and a strategic communicator. So hello to you from Nairobi in Kenya. And I hope everyone in Lusaka, Zambia, and the rest of the continent is doing great. as well as everyone in Italy and the rest of the world. It's good to have you on here, and it's an interesting conversation we're just about to have. Ambassador did talk about the fact that the conversation is centered around climate change and renewable energy in Zambia. But looking at Zambia as a case study, there are so many correlations that you can look at for the rest of the continent. So there's so many lessons the other African countries can pick out of this conversation today. Looking at opportunities for collaboration in the field of renewable energy as an answer to the climate crisis, that's the conversation that we're about to have, and also the financial guarantees and some of the key barriers to investment in renewables. So a warm welcome to all of you, wherever you are around the world. I'd like to start by inviting our speakers as well. Because I'm sure there's going to be a bit of time lagging here with the speeches. So I would like to remind us to keep time. If you are a speaker, please keep time. And if you can, try to, as much as possible, answer the questions that will be posed to you either during or after the second session. So I would like to start by inviting our first speaker, who is the Honorable Emanuela Del Rey, the Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of Italy, going to talk to us a bit more about renewables and, of course, climate change around the world.
Dear friends, I'm really glad to be here with you this morning. Warmest greetings to Minister Nkua and Minister Chiteme and to all the guests. Of course, excellent relations have linked Italy and Zambia together for decades. Soon after the independence of the country, Italian enterprises have contributed to the construction of the main Zambian infrastructures, such as the streets, power lines, the Kariba Dam, the Itezi Dam, the pipeline and the refinery in Ndola. I planned to visit Zambia last February, but unfortunately I had to postpone the trip due to the pandemic. Of course, I would like to be there because I know how beautiful the country is and how important it is for our relations. Today's webinar is a great opportunity to meet our Zambian friends in a digital event. Looking forward to the moment when I will be able to come finally to visit Zambia. All of these initiatives have strengthened our relations over the years. However, since the main global challenges have changed, it is key to expand our partnership to new fundamental sectors, such as environment. Key priorities like climate change and renewable energies have become a cornerstone of our bilateral relations. I know that the Zambian government has placed climate change at the center of its national development plan, in consideration of its sensitive impact in terms of drought and floods that have been causing major problems to the country. On this basis, I find very significant that Italy and Zambia signed an important memorandum of understanding on climate change and environmental issues in 2018. The agreement allows developing and strengthening our cooperation on very concrete projects which focus on sustainable fish farming at Lake Mweru, photovoltaic mini-grid plants in the Lundazi area, and the reduction of emissions in Lusaka and other areas. I know that the joint committee established by the Memorandum of Understanding held recently a fruitful meeting that allowed advancing on these projects and gaining ground for others more. Furthermore, Zambia is rich in renewable resources, not only hydro, which is already being exploited, but also solar, wind and geothermal energy. This large potential, combined with the decreasing cost of renewable technologies, makes Zambia's renewable energy sector attractive for private investment. The development of these resources would bring many benefits, including the ability to meet growing electricity demand and improving the resilience of the power system by mitigating the impact of climate change on hydropower. The environmental sector has high potential for fruitful cooperation between Italian and Zambian companies, as proved by the investment made by Enel Green Power in the solar plant in Ngoye. As you know, the project benefited from the World Bank Scaling Solar Program and was inaugurated in 2019. In similar ways, there are many other projects supported by the international financial institutions in Zambia, which provide great opportunities for our companies. In this sense, I wish to thank our embassy in Zambia and Rest4Africa for hosting this particular event. Rest4Africa is a very trustful partner. We are working together on a number of projects focused on Africa, also in view of our co-presidency of COP26. Excellencies, dear friends, the present COVID-19 crisis is unprecedented in its scale, magnitude and reach, but it offers also opportunities to catalyze positive changes. While recognizing that the pandemic is far from over, it is our duty to look beyond, towards a sustainable, just and resilient recovery. Italy, as next presidency of the G20 and co-president of COP26 in partnership with the UK, is aware of its responsibility in leading the multilateral effort needed to shape a better global society for our citizens. Let us be frank, only international cooperation can represent a viable solution for the challenges we are all called to face. In this spirit, Italy is shaping an agenda for the 2021 G20 presidency. The G20 Forum will hinge on three main concepts: people, planet, and prosperity. This means taking care of people and the planet in an holistic fashion. We need to pursue prosperity through a better distribution of opportunities for all, tackling inequality, empowering women, supporting precarious workers, small and medium enterprises, and the world's most vulnerable areas. In achieving these goals, we must act taking into account the defining challenge of our times, the environmental sustainability. As part of the COP26 program, Italy looks forward to hosting in Milan the preparatory event to the conference, a youth event, Youth for Climate 2021, as well as the pre-COP. We will also host in Rome a high-level ministerial outreach event on environmental and climate challenges in Africa, which will focus on energy access, adaptation, as well as biodiversity and desertification. Africa is set to be the worst affected by devastating impacts of climate change, from changing weather patterns which reduce crop yields to natural disasters which threaten communities and livelihoods. Climate change hits the most vulnerable first and hardest, paving the way to fragility and conflict. In this framework, renewable energies are the cornerstone of an economic and environmental strategy to fight climate change and to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Italy pays great attention to the development of renewable energy. In recent years, renewable energy has consolidated its standing in the national energy mix and now constitutes a fundamental component for the sustainable development of our country. Italy is the 10th producer of electricity from renewables, second only to Germany among European Union countries. We are the 6th country in the world for installed capacity in solar photovoltaic and the 10th country in the world for installed capacity in wind power. Also, through the involvement of our private sector, Italy is at the forefront on tackling climate change and enabling access to energy in Africa, in line with the UN Agenda 2030 and with the African Union Agenda 2063. We have been working to that effect also within the main multilateral agencies, such as the International Renewable Energy Agency in Abu Dhabi and the International Energy Agency in Paris, highlighting the importance of Africa as a geographical priority, being Africa the continent where the development of smarter and digital power infrastructure may have the most transformational impact, ensuring efficiency, reliability and resilience across the entire energy system. We believe that sustainable energy acts as a fundamental driver for universal energy access, clean cooking, and for the fight against energy poverty. Besides, only sustainable energy solutions based on renewables can foster the development of local communities and guarantee the autonomy from external energy supply. Wind, solar, and water to produce energy are available everywhere to everyone. Apart from being a key enabler of CO2 abatement, sustainable energy also helps creating skilled jobs in an exponential manner. I know that this webinar will pave the way to an even broader conference on climate change and renewable energies that our Embassy and Rest for Africa are already planning to host in 2021 in Lusaka. On that occasion, we foresee the participation of Italian and Zambian companies, which will have the opportunity for B2B, business-to-business meetings. My hope and my intention is to be able to attend that conference as well, hopefully during my planned visit to Zambia. With this in mind, I wish to you all a good discussion and fruitful work during the webinar. Thank you, dear friends.
All right. Thank you so much to Honorable Emanuela Del Rey, who is the Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of Italy. And she has, of course, mentioned the need for renewable energy investment, not just for developing countries, but for developed countries as well. Looking at Zambia, just like many other African countries, there has been tremendous investment in hydropower, but with climate change, there is going to be need to diversify these sources like wind and solar power as well. And so this is the reason we're having these conversations today. Our next speaker, ladies and gentlemen, is Honorable Matthew Nkua, who is the Minister of Energy in Zambia. Welcome, Honorable.
Thank you very much for this welcome. The Minister of National Development Planning for Zambia, Honorable Alexander Chiteme, MP, the Honorable Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of Italy, Emanuela Del Rey. Thank you very much for that, for those wonderful remarks. And we, as Zambian government, do acknowledge the support that you have given to us. Your Excellency, Mr. Jacek Jokowanski, Ambassador of the European Union, Delegation to Zambia and COMESA, Your Excellency Antonio Magori, Ambassador of Italy to Zambia, Mr. Roberto Vigotti, Secretary General of Rest for Africa Foundation, please keep up the good work. We are all in support of what you're doing. Dr. Giovanni Brunelli, Director of Cooperation of the Italian Ministry of Environment, Lands and Sea, senior government officials that are present, officials from the Italian Embassy, representative from Rest for Africa Foundation and Enel Foundation, representative of quasi-government institutions, and representative from the private sector and civil society organization, members of the press that are present. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure for me to participate and deliver a few remarks at this event on climate change and future renewable energy in Zambia, more so that it allows us to explore the pivotal role that renewable energies can play to promote access to sustainable energy services, especially now that we are experiencing the adverse effects of climate change in the electricity sector. As you may be aware, Zambia's electricity generation mix is predominantly hydro, accounting for 80.45% of installed capacity as of 2019. The remainder of the generation mix comprises of coal at 10.06%, heavy fuel oils at 3.69%, diesel at 2.8%, and solar at 2.99%. Despite their great potential for power generation, the share of renewable energy still remains very low in terms of contribution to the total national electricity generation mix. It is also a well-known fact that Zambia is confronted with an increased energy demand due to growing population and increase in economic social activities. Current projection indicates that growth in the demand will increase between 150 megawatts to 200 megawatts per annum. This scenario calls for concerted efforts to ensure investment in supply options meet increased demand. Further, the changes in the climate conditions and weather patterns evident in poor rainfall patterns in recent years have put a strain on our ability to meet the country's growing electricity demand, also resulting into unprecedented levels of electricity supply rationing. Ladies and gentlemen, with this in mind, government seeks to diversify and expand the national energy supply mix in line with the aspiration of the Minister of Energy in spearheading a sector-wide reform process aimed at the diversification of energy mix using renewable, alternative energy source, as well as fostering development of power sector through private participation. In the same spirit, the Minister of Energy embarked on an exercise to transform the policy, legal, and regulatory framework of the electricity sector through the recent adoption of National Energy Policy of 2019, as well as enact the Electricity Act number 11 of 2019 and Energy Regulation Act number 12 of 2019. Under this policy framework, renewable energy sources are expected to play a major role towards achievement of national vision, attaining universal access to clean, reliable, and affordable energy at lowest total economic, financial, social, and environmental cost consistent with national development goals by the year 2030. Therefore, Zambian government will continue to promote the development and use of renewable energy as a way of diversifying the energy mix and improve supply. In this regard, we have implemented the following initiative: development of renewable energy feed-in tariff, development of renewable energy mini-grid regulatory framework, development of resource map for wind and solar, and successfully implemented phase 1 of scaling solar program under IDC to maintain just but a few. Further, various initiatives are underway, such as development of renewable energy strategy and action plan, development of energy efficiency strategy and action plan, and implementation of rural electrification program and revision of grid code to include rules for integration of renewables. The just completed grid integration study by Race for Africa is one example and also a step in the right direction, as it provides evidence-based results for integration of variable renewable energy sources necessary for decision-making and expanding renewable energy contribution to the national energy mix. These initiatives provide hope and sound future for growth of renewable energy in Zambia, with full realization that government alone cannot deliver the such needed sustainable and affordable energy services across the country. Let me reassure you that government will continue to embrace private sector-led initiatives and partnership based on appropriate, market-driven, and sustainable solutions for economic prosperity. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm confident that these initiatives, together with the information exchange platforms such as this webinar, will be instrumental in bringing about partnership that will propel this country to become self-sufficient in meeting our electricity needs and also to realize our aspirations of being a net exporter of electricity in this region. As I conclude, I wish to take this opportunity to thank the Italian government and the Rest of Africa Foundation for organizing this event on climate change and the future of renewables in Africa. I also wish to extend my gratitude to the all cooperating partners for their continued support in the energy sector. Special thanks also goes to all stakeholders, particularly Rest for Africa Foundation and ENO Foundation, a team of consultants from CESI and the technical working group of Zambia experts for their dedication and commitment in ensuring successful completion of grid integration study. I look forward to our continued collaboration as we push towards the target of increased access to clean, affordable, sustainable energy and private sector participation. I thank you all.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Honorable Matthew Nkua, Minister for Energy in Zambia, giving his remarks there. Honorable, I have a question for you, but I guess I'm going to ask it at a later stage. I just need to understand the framework, because you talked about the Energy Regulatory Act of 2019 and the development of renewable energy tariffs and the Renewable Energy Strategy and Action Plan. I just needed for you to elaborate a bit more on that, but that's going to be at a later stage. I would now like to invite Honorable Alexander Chiteme, who is the Minister for National Development and Planning in Zambia, to come and give us his remarks as well. Honorable, welcome. Honorable Alexander Chiteme, the floor is yours now. All right. If he's not yet ready, I suppose we can now invite Ambassador Jacek Jankowski, who is the European Union Ambassador to Zambia, to come and give us his remarks as well before we can have the Honorable Chiteme.
Good morning, Joy. I believe there is a connection issue with Lusaka.
Okay, so I'll just go ahead and invite Dr. Giovanni Brunelli, who can give us his remarks as we try to reconnect to Lusaka, Zambia. So Dr. Giovanni Brunelli is the Director of Cooperation at the Italian Ministry of Environment, Land and Sea. A warm welcome, Dr. Giovanni Brunelli.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. Excellencies and colleagues and friends from Zambia. I am very glad and proud also, I'll explain later on why proud, to join this very interesting high-level meeting. My point is to share with you the information on how the Italian Ministers of Environment, Land and Sea support the Paris Agreement by means of our actions of cooperation. On this respect, I want to underline that our cooperation is an environmental one, so our actions are not only about with reference to the Paris Agreement, but also with other items such as biodiversity, such as soil, such as nature conservation. But a very important one, of course, is the reference to the Paris Agreement. Again, I want to underline the style by means of which we are carrying out our cooperation. We are, along with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the 17 goals. And on this respect, I can very clearly say that our internal way of cooperate for environmental issues are in line with the same attitude, or vice versa. The Foreign Affairs defined the lines to cooperate in terms of consistency, coherence with the 17 goals. And that way is also our way, the Ministry of Environment way of build and put on the ground our cooperation activities. The Honorable Deputy Minister Delvaux mentioned energy, and of course we must talk about how the 2030 Agenda deals with Sustainable Development Goal 17, ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable and modern energy. I want to underline these last terms, modern energy. My almost personal opinion is that at the date we have to look for modern way of produce and transfer energy. And I would like to share with you an important partnership that recently the Italian Ministry of Environment created this partnership with the International Energy Agency, the IEA, in order to promote smarter digital power infrastructure, the modern energy. So it's a project that has few months started since few months. So the point is that we can invite and we can also encourage our friends from Zambia, but also from all over the countries with which we have cooperation to join this project, also helping each other to go toward what has been called modern energy or smarter digital power infrastructure. It's a very concrete project, quite technical one, so I am not in a position to explain the technical aspects, but the consultants that work within this project are very high level one. I would the partnership with countries on this respect, on this project, can contribute in two main levels, or can join in two levels. The first one is working together to define guidelines to develop smart digital infrastructure. Of course, when we face a new item such as smart grid, we need very precise guidelines. Second level, we can develop specific pilot projects, very practical one, that this project will contribute to drive the national determined contribution. Again, in Paris, you know that NDCs are the most concrete and effective way to be consistent with the Paris Agreement, nationally determined contribution, in order to allow all our counterparties for cooperation activities to be consistent with their NDCs. I want to underline again that NDCs is a high in our agenda for cooperation activities. And referring to Zambia, at the beginning I said I am proud to participate to this meeting, but I am proud because just less than 1 month ago we had with our colleagues from Zambia the first joint committee, also Ambassador Maggiore as an observer, participate to this joint committee in order to apply in a concrete way the memorandum of understanding which has been signed with Zambia and the Italian Ministry of Environment years ago. Within this first joint committee, 17th of September, almost less than one month ago, during this joint committee, we could approve an initiative about upgrade of the Lundazi Green Village project, very concrete on the ground, in order to produce mini grid for photovoltaic solar energy. Again, I want to underline that our idea is to provide mini grid for the rural areas, which can, of course, use the grid since they are not near the big producers of energy. The contribution of the Ministry of Environment, Italian one, on this project is not a very big one with respect with our project, but we have on the table some 700,000 euros. And the Magodi, I've never been there, but I would like to be there. The Magodi village in Lundazi is some 750 kilometers away from Lusaka. It means that it's a very important project we can replicate in other rural areas. This is, we have also other projects which must be reshaped, and we are going to approve them within the next months. So just to say that with Zambia, the Italian Ministry of Environment has started a very good and practical cooperation on energy, but with other projects. When we talk about Paris Agreement, we talk about mitigation of the effect of the climate change, but also adaptation to these effects. And we talk about, when we talk about adaptation, we talk about a very large ranking of initiatives. And this is why we are confident that the initiative about energy in which we focus with this meeting must be approached with a very holistic way, since we can't face the climate change if we face only the energy aspect. We must face also the adaptation aspects. So again, thank you very much for allowing me to share with you these, I think, practical ideas, and I wish you a very fruitful continuing of this meeting. I'll be there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Giovanni Brunelli, the Director of Cooperation, Italian Ministry of Environment, Land and Sea. And now, ladies and gentlemen, because we would like to move into the session where we're talking about the integration of variables, renewable energy or variable renewable energy sources in the grid of Zambia, we are going to be looking at the barriers and the trends as well. And the team has put together a study, and they're going to be sharing their findings as well, that they did carry out a study. And when I talk about the team, I'm talking about the Rest for Africa Foundation, as well as NL Foundation, that was developed by CESI in close collaboration with the Ministry of Energy in Zambia, and ZESCO, as well as the ERB, who assessed the maximum amount of variable renewable energy sources capacity that can be integrated until the year 2025 and 2030 without compromising the stability of the network. So we cannot talk about a more dire time to have the integration of variable renewable energy sources. And now, if the team in Lusaka, Zambia is anything to go by right now, I think the emphasis on renewable energy is much more needed now, because I understand there has been a power cut in Lusaka, Zambia. We're trying to reconnect to them, but we're going to do that in just a short while. So I'd like to invite okay. I think we're back. We're back on the Lusaka, Zambia connection. we're back. Our connection is back in Lusaka, Zambia. So would like now to invite our next speaker, who is in the capital of Zambia, which is Lusaka, Honorable Alexander Chiteme. If you're able to hear me, we would like to hear your remarks as well in regard to climate change and renewable energy in Zambia. So Honorable Alexander Chiteme, the Minister for National Development and Planning in Zambia, welcome. All right, as they try to sort out the technical hitches there, this is just a reminder to all of us who are following the conversation that if you have any questions for any of the speakers, you can send them through the chat box that's just on your right side of your features icons. There's a space there where you're able to ask questions, and we're able to respond to them as well. So please, if you have any questions, send them through the questions box on the right-hand side of your screen, where
Good morning from the embassy. Ambassador, I believe that we still have issues with connection, this time with Joy. So if the Ministry of National Development is ready, the floor is him. Ambassador?
Now,
we are sorry with participants for these connection issues. I believe that now we can probably go on, proceed with the study on the integration of renewables into the national grid of Zambia with Mirko Armiento. Please, the floor is yours.
Okay, sure. So thank you very much. And I'm Mirko Armiento. I'm a senior researcher at Tenant Foundation. And today, together with Andrea Prudenzi from CESI, we will present you the results of our latest study on the integration of variable renewable energy sources in Zambia. First of all, let me just say that when we mean variable renewable energy sources, we mean specifically wind and PV and photovoltaics. Hello? Yeah. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, so we mean wind and PV, and the aim of the study was to assess the optimal amount of wind and PV that can be integrated in Zambia, as was recalled also by the previous speakers, and in particular in two target years, so in 2025 and 2030, so that corresponds more or less to a mid and long-term horizon. So what is the optimal amount of RES that can be integrated without affecting, of course, as was recalled, the reliability, the integrity, and the efficiency of the electric power system. This exercise we did was mainly done in order to inform the stakeholders about this optimal amount, of course, optimal both from a technical and an economic point of view. So it's maximum amount, as Joy said before, but I mean, it can be considered optimal. So what is the ideal for the country to be installed in the next 10 years? And this will allow also to analyze the effect of the integration of wind and PV into the system. So what will be, for instance, how can be successfully integrated, considering also the hydro dispatching, and what will be the effect on import and export, for instance. Another aim of the study, as was recalled by the Honorable Minister of Energy in Zambia, was first of all to give inputs on how to better accelerate the energy mix diversification. That it's a very important aim for the Zambian government, that, as was recalled, today energy is produced mainly by water, so by hydroelectric, with more than 8%, in order also to tackle the future challenges related to climate change, such as, for instance, the more frequent low rainfall periods and droughts that are affecting also the reliability of the electric system. So this study can also represent support for the government of Zambia in order also to attract private investment in renewables. Let me just thank you also all the team, the project team that participated into the study, apart from NF Foundation and CESI, who carry out the study, and Rest for Africa Foundation. I'd like also to thank you specifically ZESCO, and the Minister of Energy, of course, in Zambia, SAP, and ERB, and all the other members that contributed in the meeting we had in Lusaka, and provided us with a lot of inputs and suggestions on how to achieve the results that I'm going to show you. So if we can go to the next slide. Yes, thank you. These are some of the expected outcomes. So we want to have an exploitation plans of wind and PV that can, with the aim of reducing again hydro dependency, and also in order to exploit more the flexibility of the existing hydro generation. So how can hydro be better integrated with renewables? And we also evaluated the ability to guarantee the electrical self-sufficiency in Zambia, trying to increase only RES capacity without new hydro project, and we'll see if it's possible or not. And finally, we also assess the role of interconnection with neighboring countries. So what happens if we, have power trading on competitive markets? So how this can affect also the level, so the penetration of renewables in Zambia. So if this can increase, can favor RES or not, if it's convenient, if Zambia can export or not. So these are the expected outcomes, and we can go to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, this is briefly the methodology. As I said, in the task one was very important, but also in the other task, the collaboration with local stakeholders, because they give us the data, and together we set up the reference scenarios. And the methodology was an integrated multi-phase approach. So in each task, we obtained, we had the input to go to the next phase. And in particular, in task 2, we were assessing the reserve requirements and also the generation flexibilities, also on historical data generation in the country. Then after, in task 3, we start to assess how can be there can be an optimal coordination between hydro and thermal dispatching if we introduce variable renewables in the country, and also what are the economic constraints, and in general how what can be the benefits of RES integration. And finally, in the last task, we assessed, we perform a system reliability impact study, so analyzing the technical constraints and how RES can impact, the RES integration can impact on transmission networks. Let me just say that we performed this analysis, this simulation.
Mirko,
yes.
I'm very sorry to interrupt you. I should give the floor to the Ministry of National Development because they just informed that they are back. I'm very sorry for this interruption. Then clearly we will go back to your presentation.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And welcome, Honorable Alexander Chiteme.
Thank you very much. And we sincerely apologize for the glitch that we've had. But nevertheless, we're back. I was just about to say good morning to everyone when I was interrupted. Let me start by offering my, are we good? My gratitude for giving me the opportunity to share my statement here. I know this gathering was supposed to be held earlier, but due to the pandemic, we are doing it now and half virtual and half in the physical. I also want to acknowledge the fact that the Italian people have been severely affected by the pandemic. Allow me at this juncture to express my sincere sympathies to the Italian government and the people of Italy. We pray that God will be with you through this difficult time. And we do hope that we find a vaccine soon and that it be accessible to everyone around the globe. Ladies and gentlemen, the energy sector is critical to Zambia's social and economic development. Hence, the government has placed the sector as a high priority and is stepping up its efforts in ensuring that the energy generated is sustainable, climate smart, and renewable as we head towards our Vision 2030. Ladies and gentlemen, Zambia is determined to make important strides in attaining sustainable development goal number 7 to ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all, as is outlined in the 7th National Development Plan. In order to achieve this, we are going to do the following. 1, we're going to increase the operations in the electricity subsector. 2, we're going to promote and increase investments in renewable and alternative energy. 3, we're going to develop renewable and alternative energy infrastructure. At number 4, we're going to increase the off-grid projects, especially in rural areas. At number 5, we're going to promote energy efficient and conservation programs. And finally, we're going to develop climate resilient infrastructure in the energy subsector. Ladies and gentlemen, Zambia is implementing strategies to diversify the electricity generation mix and address the current power deficit the country has been experiencing over the past few years. Government is therefore promoting private sector investment and creating an enabling environment for ease of doing business in the electricity subsector. To stimulate the private sector investment in Zambia, government has commenced the migration of a cost-reflective electricity tariff in 2017 to augment our efforts in increasing investment in renewable energy. Government is developing a renewable energy strategy like the Minister of Energy had put it. Further, a renewable energy resource has been conducted for solar and wind energy, which directs potential investors to investment locations for solar and wind energy. However, we still face an enormous challenge in reducing the use of wood fuel and charcoal, which have the devastating effects on the environment. While the percentage of households using firewood has decreased from 50.7% in 2015 to 48.1% in 2019, against a target of 40% in 2021. On the other hand, the percentage of households using charcoal to cook increased from 32.9% in 2015 to 42.4% present in 2019, against a target of 25% in 2021. This therefore poses a major threat to the sustainability of our environment, especially the forests and our ecosystems. Ladies and gentlemen, the energy sector requires substantial amounts of investment in order to meet the increasing demand. With the support of the private sector and a conducive government environment, Government is confident that the sector will expand and our planned objectives will be met. We therefore welcome the opportunity of our private sector in Zambia to interact with counterparts from Italy so that they could undertake joint programs and projects of mutual interest. I wish to encourage them to exchange notes on innovation financing mechanisms available for renewable energy. Our focus as government is to tap into the available resources from the private sector beyond our borders on renewable energy through frameworks which include private sector partnerships, joint ventures, such initiatives could help the country benefit from the technological transfer, thereby fostering national development. I am informed that the Italian government sponsored a study on the electricity subsector, and we are looking forward to receiving the results of the study, which I believe will help us to integrate renewable energy sources in the national grid. I therefore wish to thank the Italian Embassy and Rest for Africa Foundation for organizing this timely event, and I wish that you are going to have very successful and fruitful deliberations. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Alexander Chiteme, the Minister for National Development and Planning in Zambia. Would appreciate those remarks. I'd now like to invite Ambassador Jacek Jankowski, who is the European Union Ambassador to Zambia, to share his remarks as well. Ambassador Jacek, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Honorable Matthew Nkua, Minister of Energy. Honorable Alexander Chiteme, Minister of National Development and Planning. Honorable Emanuela Del Re, Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of Italy. Mr. Roberto Vigotti, Secretary General, Rest for Africa Foundation. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. His Excellency Antonino Maggiore, Ambassador of Italy to Zambia, I would like to congratulate you on two occasions. First of all, on this conference. Secondly, on the venue. It's the very first time I'm here, so I would like to congratulate Zambian Italian Cultural Center for this beautiful venue and the Italian community here in Zambia for delivering such a beautiful venue to us. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor for me to take the floor at this webinar on climate change and renewable energy in Zambia with such a high level participation. The European Union has long been a very strong voice in promoting renewable energy in Zambia, but also throughout the world. As most of you already know, among the European Union's new political priorities, the European Green Deal comes first. The aim is to transform Europe with the ambitious objective to become the first carbon-neutral continent by 2050. Even 10 years before China, who also engage in countering climate change. Climate change is an urgent challenge for humankind and its future. It is of paramount importance to act all together, and we need to cooperate with all our partner countries to follow Europe's example. This is why this ambitious goal is translated into EU's communication towards a comprehensive strategy with Africa, with notably the Partnership for Green Transition and Energy Access. Massive investments in the renewable energy sector are key to reach this objective. An upcoming Africa-EU Green Energy Initiative shall incarnate the geopolitical EU's work in Africa, being part of Partnership for Green Transition and Energy Access. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, We are very glad hearing His Excellency President Edgar Lungu acknowledging that the threat of climate change is real and committing Zambia to the Paris Agreement on Climate Change. In this framework, Zambia's nationally determined contributions are ambitious, covering both mitigation and adaptation measures. The first NDC submission from 2016 identifies concrete measures and actions, covering, among others, renewable energy and energy efficiency. Its upcoming 2020 submission should even be more ambitious. Implementing Zambia's NDCs will certainly be a huge challenge. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Zambia has a long history with renewable energy. Its electricity generation has been dominated by large-scale hydropower since 1960. Currently, as Minister already said, hydroelectricity contributed about 86% of the total electricity generated in the country. The share of other renewable energy generation is growing, but not fast enough to mitigate risks of dependency on one energy source. Energy poverty is widespread in rural Zambia, where unsustainable exploitation of forests and woodlands for charcoal production prevails. There is a clear need to look for more sustainable energy strategies. On-grid and off-grid renewable energy, particularly solar, could be part of the solution. The lack of access to modern and environmentally friendly sustainable energy services in Zambia limits economic opportunities, widening the gap between the rich and the poor. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, access to affordable, reliable, and sustainable energy services is a condition for economic and social development, in particular, health, education, industrialization, digitalization, but also gender equality, jobs creation, sustainable transport, sustainable agricultural growth, food security, environment, climate, clean water, and sanitation. Therefore, fighting energy poverty is key to address territorial, economic, and social inequalities and to contribute to our overall objective of poverty eradication and inclusive sustainable development. Despite a huge solar energy potential, penetration of solar technologies and their contributions to the national energy mix in Zambia remains too low. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, on the top of the huge cost for the necessary investments, there are various barriers and obstacles which very much slow down the development of the sector. And among others, we can mention policy and regulatory obstacles, non-cost reflective tariffs and limited incentives to invest in renewable energy, complicated and lengthy licensing and permits system. All these obstacles mostly touch upon governance issues. There is a strong need for reforms to lift them up to unlock the situation. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the challenges are important. The European Union with its member states and the European Investment Bank, Europe's Climate Bank, when it comes to investment in the green and renewable energy sector, are well placed to support Zambia in its ambitious objectives of creating conditions and facilitating the development of renewable energies. The wide palette of instruments it can offer, which my colleague will detail during one of the panels, authorizes multiple innovative possibilities. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I sincerely hope that this webinar will help identifying avenues for accelerating the pace towards the Zambia's energy transformation, the well-being of its population, and humankind more general. Thank you very much. Zikomo Kwambiri, Natasha Sana, grazie mille.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Jacek Jankowski, the European Union Ambassador to Zambia. And now let's quickly get into our first session, or continue with our first session that was led by Marco Amiento, who is the senior researcher at the NL Foundation, to talk to us about the study on the integration of variable renewable energy sources in the grid of Zambia, and also looking at the barriers and the trends. Mr. Marco Amiento, the floor is yours again.
Okay, thank you very much. So let me just recap like the few slides in 3 words. So basically, the aim of the study was to assess the optimal amount of RES that can be integrated, optimal both from a technical and an economic point of view, can be integrated in Zambia in 2 target years, that is 2025 and 2030. So as explained before, the methodology basically was an integrated multi-phase approach. So it was based the study on a market-based analysis and also on a network impact study. And I explained before the aim of each task. And I was just saying that there were 2 main scenarios that were considered in the modeling and in the study. One called isolated scenario, in which we consider only Zambia, so without the use of competitive markets, and then the interconnection were not fully exploited. But in the isolated scenario, we also consider the firm export that represents the obligation or the bilateral contracts that Zambia has with other neighboring countries, such as Namibia, for instance. And then we assessed the interconnected scenario, in which we introduced the power trading. So what happened if we introduce power trading on competitive markets? So how, the export, if Zambia can use RES, for instance, to export energy within the region, the South African region. So if we can go to the next slide. Okay, perfect. Then we will have, I have here just the results of the study, so the core of the study, and after I will leave the floor to Andrea for more details. As you can see, we start so from a large percentage of hydro, more than 80% today. So in 2019, the installed capacity, more than 80% was hydro, and then there were fossil fuels and a small percentage of photovoltaics. But we saw that the optimal amount of wind and PV, its potential is big, is huge. As you can see, in 2025, in the isolated scenario, wind and PV can cover 20% each of the installed capacity. And in 2030, this percentage can increase further, so up to 22% both for PV and wind. But what is more important is that in the isolated scenario, we evaluated that RES penetration can be up to 27%. So they can cover up to 27% of the load of the demand. And these are, very relevant figures. And on the other side, if we saw what happens in the interconnected scenario, so when we allow the power trading on competitive markets, the penetration of RES can be higher. So we can have, half of the installed capacity, both in 2025 and 2030, covered by RES, by wind and PV, and wind and PV can cover almost 36%. So the penetration level, it's huge, can cover up to 36% of the load. Now, let me just leave the floor to Andrea for more details on the study, and I'd like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mirko. Andrea Prudenzi is the project manager at CESI, and he's going to take on from where Marco had left it. Welcome, Andrea Prudenzi.
Good morning, everyone. I'm a senior consultant in CESI and a project manager in CESI. And first of all, let me say that it was a pleasure collaborate with Zambian institutions and companies involved in the development of the electricity sector in Zambia to provide a useful information to support RES integration in the country. Now we can see more in detail the result of the variable RES integration study, and you can look in this slide the optimal installed capacity that can be integrated. That is a considerable amount of installed capacity that could be integrated on top of the projects in the country pipeline, up to 3,800 megawatt variable RES capacity could be installed within 2030. And in particular, at 2019, the existing and committed projects were about 446 megawatts from PV and 0 megawatt from wind. Up to 1,376 megawatt from PV and 1,400 megawatt from wind could be integrated within 2030 if no exchanges with neighboring countries are considered, except for firm export due to the power purchase agreements with the neighboring countries. But additional 34% variable RES capacity can be integrated both in the medium and long-term scenarios, exploiting the interconnections and the power trading on the competitive market. This is the interconnected scenarios reported in the slides. So up to about 1,090 megawatts from PV and 1,090 megawatts from wind could be reached in the 2030. Then next slide, please. Okay, the analysis of the network constraints allowed to calculate also the best distributions of wind and PV capacity on the grid, highlighting the installed capacity advised for each substation, both for 2025 and 2030 for each analyzed scenarios. Most of the wind and PV capacity is in the area around Lusaka, because there is both a very good renewable potential, wind and solar, but also the availability of network facility in the area able to support the load centers. Sorry. Okay. During the study, raised also issue about the impact of variable RES capacity in the short term, because of the high number of requests received from private investor received by the Ministry of Energy in Zambia for wind, mainly from PV capacity projects. At the beginning of a renewable energy process, the high number of requests with a relative short term for the short time to market of these projects often clash with the times for realization and the uncertainties of the transmission projects. So for this reason, a worst case sensitivity scenarios has been analyzed, assessing the maximum wind and PV installed capacity that can be installed in by 2022. So considering only the current transmission grid and not the network reinforcement expected in the long-term transmission expansion plan. So a range of feasible solutions have been provided, and in the isolated scenarios, up to 960 megawatt from PV could be integrated without wind projects. This is the scenarios named 100% PV. But if the maximum PV installed capacity shall be reduced in order to integrate additional wind projects, up to we need to reduce the amount of PV in the country pipeline in order to increase wind, and the results is that up to 500 megawatts PV and 260 megawatt wind installed capacity could be integrated in the system. Then additional 100 megawatt PV capacity could be integrated if we consider the integration of the market at regional level. This value is reduced, is a little share of the additional capacity, because in the very short term the network facility didn't allow a full exploitation of the interconnections and the opportunities for the integration within the regional competitive market. Then the role of hydropower is crucial. It's crucial for the integration of variable RES in Zambia. Flexibility of Kafue Gorge and also Kariba hydropower station that have a very high capacity reservoir play a key role to balance the variability of wind and solar productions, maintaining the security of supply. With the current energy mix, hydroelectric reservoirs must store huge volumes of water in short periods, the months earlier in the year, to make it available in the second half of the year, during the dry season, in order to meet the annual demand. A great seasonal stress of the reservoirs and the risk of lack of power at the end of the year arise, especially if consecutive dry years occur. So the integration of variable RES, which peaking during the dry season, would reduce the reservoir's stress, thanks to the good complementarity with the hydro sources. On the contrary, variable RES integration leads more stress in the daily operation of the hydropower power plants with the reservoir to cope with the steeper ramps and the deeper turndowns to meet the net load. The integration of the country in the competitive market allows a better integration of variable RES and make convenient the power import during the night, as you can see in the pictures in the slides, when the price of electricity in SAP is low, and the power export during the daytime hours when the price in SAP is higher than the price in Zambia. So there is the flexibility of hydropower station could lead the exploitation of market opportunity at regional level and the best use of energy sources for the country and also for the regional market. Even the role of the interconnections and the transmission grid is important for the integration of in the system of this kind of energy sources. Interconnections improve the flexibility of the system to cope with the variability and also the uncertainty of wind and photovoltaic productions, support the security of supply, and avoid also over-generation phenomena. Wind and PV capacity joined with the flexibility of hydropower plants would allow Zambia to take market opportunity in SAP, both on daily and yearly basis. Results of the study showed that Zambia could be a net exporter between March and September, while a net importer at the beginning and at the end of the year, mainly due to the lack of hydropower in these periods. The network analysis shown that the transmission network expansion plan outlined by ZESCO for the period 2020-2030 will allow the integration of variable RES capacity without any major restrictions. So only few additional reinforcements are advised to support mainly the demand growth in the area of Lusaka and Kafue. Then, what are the key final messages from the study? First, an energy diversification strategy based on the exploitation of both wind and solar potential and relying on the interconnections can strengthen short and also long-term resilience of the power system. Then the analysis clearly highlights that additional capacity can be integrated in the from wind sources on top of the projects already in the country pipeline, supporting the electricity demand, the growing of the electricity demand, maintaining the high standard of security of supply, and improving the system resilience to, for example, low rainfall periods and droughts. A well-balanced energy mix can be achieved, reducing dependency from hydropower, and this is very important, 27% of variable RES penetration without power trading on competitive markets, and up to 36% with a full regional market integration within 2025. Variable RES, however, alone does not assure the electrical self-sufficiency of Zambia. And so without import from neighboring country, additional non-variable renewable capacity, for example, hydropower, shall be integrated in the system, and this is according with the analysis that the country, that the minister and also ZESCO are doing on candidate hydropower, big hydropower projects to support the security of supply in the long term. The flexibility of hydropower plants can efficiently balance the variability of wind and PV generation and plays a key role in variable RES integration. So, however, hydropower management needs to shift from the current demand-dependent approach to the future variable-dependent approach in order to balance the variability of wind and solar sources, solar productions, to meet the security of supply. The interconnection exploitation, the integration of the markets, and an effective cooperation among the system operators in SAP will lead to the maximization of the renewable penetration and also the best use of energy sources, both on national and regional basis. The current network facilities and the operating reserve capacity will allow the integration of substantial amount of wind and PV capacity already in 2022, and up to 1,000 megawatt PV projects could be integrated. Finally, long-term transmission grid expansion plan established by ZESCO will allow the gradual integration of the variable RES capacity during the planning period 2020 and 2030 without any major restriction. Finally, this analysis was a first step of the technical integration process of variable renewable energy sources, because the outcomes of the study provided an estimate of the optimal wind and PV capacity that could be technically and economically integrated in the Zambian electric power system. But next steps are advised. For example, specific in order to conclude the integration process of renewable energy in the power system to reach the connections of each wind and PV projects to the grid, to the transmission grid. So specific feasibility studies, including steady state, dynamic, and also power quality analysis, are recommended for variable RES projects to take the most suitable technical solutions to fully integrate variable RES projects into the grid. Then also careful attention should be given to the technical standards and grid code requirements in presence of variable renewable generation. So a proper update of the grid connections rules is advised to ensure that wind and PV projects don't have a negative impact on the quality and also the reliability of the electricity of supply in the future. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Andrea Prudenzi, who's the project manager at CHESI, talking to us about the variable renewable energy sources that can be integrated into the national grid in Zambia. And I would now like to invite our next speaker, Trevor Konda, who is the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Energy in Zambia. Welcome, and would also like to remind our speakers, including our peers, time is of the essence. Welcome.
Right. Thank you very much. My slides are
PS, you're welcome. We can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. I know time is of the essence, and in moving forward, I'd just like to ride on the protocols already announced at the beginning of the session, just to save on time. I've got about 10 slides that I'd like to go through, but the beauty about presenting after two ministers from Zambia have presented is that I have less to talk about. So some of the information in the slides I will skip. And then when the consultants also give you exciting results, you don't want to continue speaking to the good news that we've received so far. So the outline of my presentation is just an introduction, the key developments in the renewable energy sector, the barriers that have been observed in this space, and conclusion. We can go on to the next slide, please. Well, in the introduction, I think what I wanted to say really has been said, and that we are looking forward to, in line with our national vision, to provide universal access to clean, reliable, and affordable energy by 2030. So we can move on to the next slide. In the next slide, what I just want to touch on are the trends, key developments in the renewable energy sector. The policy and legislative framework, I think my two ministers touched on them, the update of our National Energy Policy and the Electricity Act and the Energy Regulation Act. And currently, we are also reviewing the Rural Electrification Act. And then the programs under development that are being supported by various stakeholders. I think my ministers have touched on this. We can go on to the next slide. Again, here, I think I'll focus on the last section about private sector participation. What is above there, I think everyone can read and see, just to indicate that we have in the ministry an office responsible for promoting private power initiatives, and they are responsible primarily for issuance of feasibility rights. And this year alone, in 2020, 38 of those feasibility study rights that have been issued are in the renewable energy space. So we are excited about this, and we want to see how we take this process forward. And then with regard to the energy regulator, the ERB in Zambia, when we look at the standard licenses that they issued last year in 2019, out of the 156 licenses that were issued, 31 were dealing with electricity and renewable energy subsectors. So this does demonstrate to us that there is interest, growing interest from the private sector in this space. We can move on to the next slide, please. What have been some of the barriers that have been observed in the market? One of them, the first one, is the non-reflective, cost-reflective tariffs. This has led to the cost of service study that is currently underway, and we are hoping that this will be concluded by March next year. And then further, the government is also in the process of developing the open market access regime regulations. This is a drawdown from the Electricity Act of 2019. One of the concerns from the private sector was, how do we invest in a market where the tariffs are not cost reflective? So when we amended the Electricity Act, we provided for open market access such that
If somebody generates power in the country, they can take advantage of the regional market where the rates are slightly better in terms of exporting of power. We can move on to the next slide. And so these regulations to give effect to that provision are being developed currently. And then the other thing that was observed was the inadequate regulatory framework. And what we're now saying is that in the New Electricity Act of 2019 and the Energy Regulation Act, there are provisions to regulate bilateral tariffs. And in particular here, issues of the relationship between the ZESCO, our power producer, and the mining companies, so that there's clarity and we move away from the disputes that have been there in the past. And we're hoping that with this in place, we'll have a better framework for regulation of bilateral tariffs. And then the other aspect about barriers to in the market, it's research and development. And so we are happy with the results that have been presented so far. We believe that it's such initiatives that help us develop the necessary depth in research and development in the country. And then just to conclude, I like what the previous speaker touched on in terms of the next steps about moving from this study to a full feasibility study, so that we see how the full feasibility study can inform the energy mix in the country, where we see the potential for wind and solar. This, I definitely agree that we need to take that approach of moving to the full feasibility, so that we see how much of the variable renewable energy can be integrated in the system to take advantage of the gap in the country and also the regional market and ensuring security of supply of electricity. I thank you for listening, and I hope I've managed my time well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, Trevor Konda, who is the Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Energy in Zambia. Quite interesting remarks there. The steps being taken to diversify the energy mix. He did talk about the fact that one of the barriers is the inadequate regulatory frameworks. And I think that is one of the issues that many investors are struggling with in Zambia and many other African countries, research and development as well. But now, we'd like to get into our second session, and this one is about scaling up investments in Zambia, the financial opportunities for foreign direct investments. And this is basically going to center around the de-risking instruments designed to enhance private investment in Zambia's renewable energy sector. And the speakers for this session are Fidelis Mubiana, who is the Director Generation at ZESCO. And he's also going to be accompanied within this session is also Kachinga Wankunda Firi, who is the Senior Business Development Zambia for NL Green Power, who is the Renew Africa Finance Leader and Global Head of Energy at Intensa São Paulo, and also Christopher Sanders, who is the Energy Portfolio and Zimbabwe at the World Bank, and Matthias, who is the European Union, from the European Union delegation. So we are going to start off with Fidelis Mubiana, who is the Director Generation at ZESCO. Welcome. I think we're going to have to unmute his sound. Great, it's now okay.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everyone, and I'm happy to be with you in this webinar today. I'm just going to speak briefly on the topic at hand, and I just want to say that yes, as my previous speaker has spoken, a lot of items I had to speak on have already been spoken on by the previous speakers. So I'll go straight into discussing the issues to do with climate change. Then I'll look at our experiences with scaling solar and try to share some views from that element, and then I'll conclude from there. To start with, I think climate change is real. We have experienced it at ZESCO firsthand. In the last 6 years, we've had 6 droughts, and these droughts have been increasing in frequency, because in the past, the droughts only used to come across maybe 1 cycle in 10 years, or 2 cycles in 15 years. But now we're having droughts, 3 droughts in 6 years, and this has led to low water levels being a perennial issue in our reservoirs, and this also is affecting very much our generation in the country. Of course, the weather-induced power deficit is leading to countrywide load management, costly emergency power. We have had to import power in 2015, 2016, and we are still having those effects of the costly legacy costs from that importation. We are also seeing a quite deep impact on our GDP as a nation, and yes, that's why government is working very hard to ensure that we diversify our generation mix. And for me, this report having come from Chelsea and West Africa. West Africa, I think, is a very good beginning point in terms of moving forward to reduce the impact of droughts in our system. As seen already from the report from Chelsea, I think, yes, there's quite some good opportunity in Zambia for investment in variable renewable energy sources. Of course, we have already seen that we have abundant solar energy. We have available wind resource. We have, of course, a very good hydro power base, which works very well to support the implementation of variable renewable energy sources. And we also have a very good interconnected transmission network, which as ZESCO we're still working to actually improve on. And I think when we get to the areas of 2030, we intend to have again more connections that will help in terms of actually allowing more variable energy to come through. My previous speaker has talked about the good regulatory framework that is there. Basically, the network that ZESCO has, most of it is going to be common carrier, availing all IPPs that want to invest to be able to use the network. And in that way, I think it affects the issue of ZESCO not being the only off-taker, but also having other off-takers in the system. Of course, the success story is that of IDC scaling solar, which has brought in the 2 plants that are currently running, and are running very well, and giving us the benefits of being able to experience how to integrate variable renewable energy in our system, and how to dispatch the same within our system. Of course, the key bottleneck is that of cost reflective tariff. We don't yet have cost reflective tariffs, but as spoken already, I think government has shown a lot of willpower to be able to move us towards cost reflective tariffs. And we believe that once the cost of service study is done, the migration to cost reflective tariff will be done, and this will help the engagement into the new renewable energy sources. To talk about the scaling solar program, success factors that we've seen from that program, key among them is the competitive procurement process. I think we had 2-stage auctions that had 48 bidders coming through. I think with that, we saw that we were able to drive the pricing, the tariffs quite low. Other things that helped to ensure that that's a success was the pre-selection of sites. I think IDC owned the land and made it available to the developers, and ZESCO also enabled a grid connection that worked very well for the bidders. Of course, we had a lot of consultants coming through providing support to ZESCO as off-taker, and also doing some due diligence reports that were availed to the bidders. I think one of the biggest in terms of interventions was the issue of using standardized project documents. We all know that it takes a long time when you have bilateral agreements to agree on standardized PPA, connection agreements, and all the like. But with the approach taken by Scale and Solar, I think this was standardized from the beginning, and then it was very easy to move quickly and be able to implement shortest possible time. 2015, 2019, we can see that the financial close was done quite quickly, and we believe that this was only possible because of the interventions put in place. And we have seen how difficult it is when you have standalone, investors. It takes a long time to reach financial close, and that does affect the progress of the projects. Yeah, I think maybe the other de-risking mechanisms that I can talk about is, maybe having a basket of financiers in place, and also the partial risk guarantee that was put in place to support the purchaser, that is ZESCO. Of course, with our first line security being that of the bank LC that we have, we stand chart, and so that I think things have worked very well so far. We have not reached a point whereby we had a likelihood of default. That hasn't happened. Payments have been done every month, and we don't see any risk of default in this arrangement because of price parity. I think the prices are quite low, and we are able to meet them with the pricing we're getting from sale of our mines. Yeah, I think I will end here for the time being, and for any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dennis Mubiana, the Director Generation at ZESCO. I'd now like to bring on our next speaker, who is Kachinga Wankuna Thierry, who is the Senior Business Developer, Zambia at NL Green Power. Just a reminder to our speakers, please try to keep time, try to make your remarks as brief as possible. Thierry, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Joy. And I'm not sure whether to say good morning or good afternoon to everybody else who is joined us for this webinar. I have a few slides. I will quickly go through the introductory slides, and then have 2 or 3 slides that specifically speak to our experience with Ngonye. So can we move on to the next slide, please? Okay, just to say that NL Green Power is part of the NL Group, which is a multinational energy company. We have a presence in 35 countries, over 5 continents. And an overview of just our performance in 2019, we had a total installed capacity of 85 gigawatts. Over 50% of that, 53% was renewable. Energy generation was 239 terawatt hours. Our revenue in 2019 was just over 80 billion euros, and currently have a market capitalization of 75.1 billion listed on the Milan Stock Exchange. We can go to the next slide. Okay, this is just showing the other subsidiaries in the NL Group. Of course, we have renewables, thermal generation. We're involved in infrastructure and networks, in retail supply directly to customers, in trading, and e-solutions, which is looking at energy storage and electric vehicle support as well. Next slide, please. In terms of green power, this slide basically shows the dark green shows the countries where we have an established presence. So we have operating facilities there, over 30 countries. And the light green you see there in Africa and bits of Europe is areas where we have projects currently under development. So again, as of 2019, we had an installed capacity of 42 gigawatts of renewable energy and managed a total of 46 gigawatts. And the split was, the majority is hydro, 28 gigawatts of hydro, 10.7 gigawatts of wind, 2.8 gigawatts of solar, and almost 1 gigawatt of geothermal. I think we can move to the next slide. This is just narrowing our focus on the African continent, in Eastern and Southern Africa. So we do have already a presence in South Africa, where we have a total of 1,200 megawatts. Of that, about 522 megawatts is already in operation, and another 700 megawatts is under construction. And we expect the facilities under construction to be fully operational by 2022. We did commission last year the 34 megawatt solar PV plant in Gonye, which was procured under the Scaling Solar, which I will speak to shortly. We also have a presence in Kenya, where we are exploring possibility of developing projects there, and also have basically have an outlook on the countries below in Africa that we are also keeping an eye on. So Ethiopia, Tanzania, Botswana, Mozambique, Uganda, and Rwanda are countries that are currently on our radar. Next slide, please. This just shows the breakdown of the plants that we have in operation in South Africa. As I said, the key thing is just that we have 522 megawatts already in operation, a total of 6 projects, and another 700 megawatts that's currently under construction. We can move on to the next slide. Thank you. This then narrows our focus onto our experience with scaling solar. And I wanted to start off by saying, I think like any other IPP or investor, when we are looking at a new market and potentially establishing a presence in a new market, there are obviously key aspects that you'll be looking out for. And these would be, some of them are what I have listed on the left of my presentation. One is you're looking for political and economic stability. I think that's not specific to any sector. That's generally what you'll be looking at for any nation. Specifically in the sector, you'll be looking at whether there is a robust and a structured legal and regulatory framework for development of projects. We're speaking specifically here renewables. And then we also want to see a structured, transparent, and competitive tender process, which will also be supported with bankable project documentation and technical expertise. This is key for us as NL because it's a policy that we only participate in procurements that are transparent and that are competitively based. Then the issue of institutional capacity is also important. Institutional capacity to manage the procurement framework is a key thing. Institutional capacity at the regulatory level is also an important thing that we look out for. Then we also look at the off-taker and need to be satisfied that we're dealing with a credit-worthy off-taker. I think this is probably one of the key things when you're talking bankability. We usually narrow down and begin to talk about the off-taker. So that's an important consideration for us. And then the last point will probably sit under economic stability, but you are then looking at issues to do with exchange rate, convertibility of the rate. Ideally, developers in the sector would be looking at having a PPA that's priced in foreign currency. Majority of your costs will be forex based. But if not, of course, you would then be looking at the rate and the convertibility and the ability for you to move from one currency to the other. So I'd say that these are the factors that would affect bankability, and all have risks that need to be covered. And in the next slide, before I move to the next slide, but the next slide will then speak to how, in our view, we think that the scaling solar project did address those risks. Sorry, before we move to this slide, can I just give an overview of the Ngonye project? So on our right here, I think we're already familiar with the, sorry, yeah, thank you. Our project was commissioned on the 19th of May last year. It has an installed capacity of 34 megawatts. Our PPA with ZESCO is for 28 megawatts AC. The 34 megawatts is DC. In terms of shareholding, it's 80% owned. The company itself, Ngonye Solar PV company, is 80% owned by Enel Green Power and 20% owned by the IDC. The IDC is a government body, the Industrial Development Corporation, responsible for investments, and in partnership with the IFC, play the role of the procuring authority for this tender, and also a shareholder in Ngonye. The investment was a total of about $45 million US, and it was financed about 70% with debt and almost 30% equity. Our tariff to ZESCO is just over 7 cents per kilowatt hour, and we have a 25-year PPA with ZESCO, the national utility. The plant is located in an economic zone called the Lusaka South Multi-Facility Economic Zone. We can go to the next slide. So in terms of de-risking investments, one of the things that we liked with the scaling solar was that it was developed to employ auctions for industrial scale energy projects. And the aim was to generate lower tariffs through a structured and transparent bidding process and allow industry in participating countries to grow. Two key things which we valued from scaling solar was, one, the technical assistance that the World Bank provided to the project itself. And this included legal, financial, technical, regulatory, and procurement advisors who worked closely with local stakeholders to structure the program. There was made available to us a data room containing thorough technical, legal documents related to the project and development of the project. And there were already pre-structured, pre-negotiated, pre-approved standard documents for the project. So your PPA, your government support agreement, and other such documents were, as part of the technical assistance provided, were developed by the World Bank technical team in collaboration with key local stakeholders. And this increased the transparency and reduced potential risks and costs that bidders would face. In terms of the specific de-risking instruments that were provided in the program itself, firstly, we had the PPA with ZESCO, of course. In the PPA, ZESCO is required to provide payment security via a letter of credit, which is, of course, in place. To support that, the government then also entered into a government support agreement with the project company Ngonye, in which essentially the government makes commitment to provide certain undertakings to Ngonye in connection with the payment obligations of ZESCO, as well as cover a termination price in the event that you have an early termination. And on the basis of that, we then also had the framework from the World Bank came with guarantees which bidders or the successful developers then had the option of choosing which one they preferred the most. What we decided to take on for Ngonye was an IDA guarantee, which is basically a guarantee from IDA to Standard Chartered, which is the bank that provided the letter of credit to Ngonye, that any payments that would be due to them from the government or ZESCOP would be covered by the IDA. This itself was supported by an investment credit agreement, which was signed between the government and Standard Chartered. Now, so without this guarantee from the IDA and the support that was generally provided by the IFC, we think that it would have been extremely difficult to have a bankable project. And the provision, the presence of World Bank and IFC, the technical support that they provided, the standard documents that were developed for the project, and the specific payment guarantees that were provided by IDA, as well as the MEGA support that was provided, I think significantly helped to provide comfort to us as an IPP and a developer, and enabled us to participate. And of course, we're one of the successful bidders in this.
Right.
I think
Katinga,
I'll end here.
I just wanted to ask you to speed it up, but if you're saying you're ending there, much appreciated.
I mean, the next slide is just talking about lessons learned and things that could be done better, but I think I can end here.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And we do appreciate the fact that you understand that we're running out of time pretty much. I'd now like to invite Luca Matron, Renew Africa Finance Leader and the Global Head of Energy at Intensa San Paulo. Kindly keep your remarks brief as you can. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Joy. And first of all, let me greet all the authorities, my fellow panelists, and all the attendees. I'll be very quick. Next slide, please. I will go to the presentation. So Intesa San Paulo is the largest bank in Italy, is the second largest European bank by market cap. We are present in Africa we cover African clients through the Dubai hub, and we have 1.8 billion of loan assets that are basically that spans through the African continents, and in particular we finance deals in Kenya, Cameroon, Angola, Egypt, obviously Zambia, Ethiopia, Ghana, Uganda, Algeria, Tanzania, and Cote d'Ivoire. We have the second one of the largest bank in Egypt, that is a large Alex Bank, with 6 billion euro of total assets and 1.6 million customers. Next slide, please. One of the landmark transactions that we financed was in Ethiopia. In particular, we financed the so-called Kosha project, that is an hydropower plant that basically we financed through a so-called export credit facility. We provided an export credit facility to Ethiopian Electric Power. We were MLA with 400 million of financing, with a tenor of 15 years. So this is a financing that is backed by an insurance policy from SACE, the Italian Credit Export Agency. Next slide, please. So a couple of minutes more to dive you into the framework of the how to scale up the renewable investments in Africa. So we already heard my fellow panelists speaking about the de-risking need of investments, and for sure scaling solar is a reference, is a benchmark to foster renewables. So scaling solar, as it was said, is a program supported by the World Bank Group and is active for the time being in 6 countries, including obviously Zambia. The point is that the investments that are required in Africa create the need of more programs. So no single program is likely to be adequate for the 1.5 trillion dollars investments that are estimated to be required. There are a plethora of European instruments, and we believe that the current fragmentation may be a little bit confusing for investors. In addition, the instruments currently available usually use a so-called guarantee approach, so they cover the first losses, whereas investors need to have comprehensive guarantees. And so this basically was the background following which a bunch of European operators in the renewable space, including obviously Enel Green Power, but also Siemens Gamesa, EDP Renovables, Vestas, Nordex, and a few DFIs, the Cassa Depositi e Prestiti, and European Investment Bank basically collaborated to develop this program that is called Renew Africa. That basically we are suggesting the European Union to finance through the Africa EU program and the Green New Deal. So we are promoting the adoption by the European Union of this program. And this program is basically an holistic program. So in our intention, it has to cover all the value chain. So starting from the capacity building and the technical assistance in order to create, the background to do these projects. Then in our aspiration, it should create local knowledge to increase knowledge at the local level of the workforce, then envisage standardized documentation, standardized auction processes, and basically be dedicated not only to one technology, but cover all the renewable technologies, cover not a limited amount of countries, but be applicable in the entire African area, and therefore, we believe this could accelerate investments in the area. Next slide, please. In going into the details of the risks that in our intention this program should cover, basically we have country-related risks that are, as Enel Green Power was anticipating, political risks, risk of expropriation or nationalization, dispute resolution risk, and then Enel Green Power was speaking of foreign exchange and convertibility risks. We have the permitting process that has to be carefully assessed. And then we have, typical project-related risks that are not related to Africa, but are related in general to project financing scheme. So the typical cost overruns, delays, shortfall in planned performances, and finally the post-completion risk. So we were already talking of the off-take risk, so to have credit-worthy counterparty entering off-take agreements, and curtailment risk, termination risk. We were discussing before. So this is, the complex framework according to which we need to structure an investment in renewable in general, in particular in Africa. And our objective is to give an instrument that will allow to accelerate investment, to attract equity investors, and make the projects bankable. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Luca Matron. And I'd now like to invite Christopher Sanders, who is the Energy Portfolio Manager for Zambia and Zimbabwe at the World Bank, to also give his remarks or share his insights on scaling up investments in Zambia, as well as the financial opportunities for FDI. Christopher, welcome, and you may take off your mask. And yeah, go ahead. You have 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, everybody. I will do as my predecessors and write on the protocols that have already been put forth. Thanks very much again for the opportunity to speak here at this webinar this morning. You'll be glad to know I don't have any slides, and I will keep my comments brief. I only have 2 points, given that our colleagues have done such a good job of presenting the scaling solar structure and other risk mitigation instruments before me. Really what I'd like to do, well, first of all, to refer you, if you'd like to know more about World Bank Group risk mitigation or de-risking instruments, please feel free to Google World Bank Group guarantee products. There's a very good short paper, 10 pages, that does a great job of outlining them. I will focus my comments on project-based guarantees, primarily through IDA for the public sector. Let's be honest though, de-risking instruments are intended to address risk, but there are 2 types of risk, especially when it comes to the African market. There's perceived risk and there's real risk. One of the big obstacles to attracting FDI in Zambia and Africa more broadly is that perception of risk among foreign investors. Risk tolerances are either lower for domestic investors. Thank you. Risk tolerances are either lower for domestic investors, or there's simply a lack of long-term presence in the country. That means that foreign investors are unable to properly assess the risks for a project. I would argue that the perception of risk is that part of risk that multilateral and other guarantee instruments or other de-risking instruments are the best place to address. In the case of scaling solar, the IDA guarantee had a number of effects that addressed the perception of risk. Firstly, I know the World Bank comes in for a lot of criticism, much of it well-deserved. Having said that, I think our stamp of approval is still still counts for quite a lot. The instruments, the vetting that we do as part of our due diligence, and the institutional strengthening and increased rigor that we bring to the process breaks down that perception of risk. Sorry, I'm dealing with some feedback here. Second, the World Bank Group involvement gives the perception, hopefully true perception, that there's additional work going on with the client behind just that project, that we're also targeting the broader sector and the country for support. And third, we bring multilateral and bilateral financing to the table with us. We're able to aggregate in that way, and that creates an added element of comfort for foreign investors. I'd argue also that there's a demonstrative effect for de-risking investments like the one of the World Bank, the IDA guarantee under scaling solar. When news of the tariff in Zambia broke, it made waves across the world, across the sector, because it created a fundamental shift in that pricing curve for foreign investors in Africa. That being said, there's also real risk, which I would argue multilateral de-risking instruments can also address, but maybe not quite as fully, at least not by themselves. Below, I want to give a few examples, well, briefly, verbally, I'll give a few examples of what I see to be much stronger de-risking instruments. First of all, as it's already been pointed out, let's not forget that a big part of scaling solar success comes from the combination of either guarantees with other forms of multilateral support and technical assistance. It's unclear to me whether a guarantee alone for the same amount from an unknown actor and without other assurances regarding project bankability would yield the same appetite from developers and investors. There's something about the transparent, predictable, competitive tender process that scaling solar ran, which itself was a form of de-risking investment. So the lesson there is planning and procurement, competitive procurement, is key. The second is that project risks are lower when the power purchase agreement tariff is lower than the average tariff in the country, which it was for scaling solar, and when the project is relatively small or the payment is relatively small relative to other payments for the utility.
Great.
Both of those things were true for scaling solar. And again, procurement is key. And finally, I would just like to close by saying, outside of the uncontrollables like macro and COVID, other things we can't control, maybe the best thing that we can do for de-risking investments is obviously ensuring sector and utility viability and creditworthiness. And that comes, in my view, from three things. In our view, long-term sector planning, and most importantly, adherence to that long-term sector planning. The balancing of costs and revenues, that means moving to cost-reflective tariffs, reducing costs where possible, and transparent, predictable, and most importantly, independent regulation of the sector. That's it for me. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Christopher Sander is the Energy Portfolio Manager for Zambia and Zimbabwe at the World Bank. Talks about the external factors aside, there's need for viability and also long-term sector planning. I would now like to invite Matthias Singh, who is the European Union, from the European Union delegation. Welcome, and please keep your remarks as brief as possible.
Yes, I'm not sure if you can see me because I work on my mobile phone, but you can hear me, isn't it?
We can hear you, but we're not seeing you. But go ahead, please.
You won't miss anything, but I try to keep short. So I'm Matthias Reusing at the EU delegation. I'm dealing with large part of the Green Deal, basically, and the ambassador alluded what it is about. And of course, the Green Deal comes very much in the context also of the recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, which should be a green recovery to build back better. That's one of our mantras, basically. And you all know we see the European Green Deal as Europe's growth strategy, and we invite, of course, in our international partnerships that countries do that increasingly as well. Ambassador Major also mentioned planet, people, and prosperity. That's, of course, very high in this agenda. So how does the EU facilitate financing and scaling up investments in renewable energy in Zambia and in Africa as a large? We have traditionally, of course, we have instruments like in our national indicative program and the regional program. We have traditional implementation modalities, and I start with those ones, like blending of loans and grants. A good example is in Zambia, the rehabilitation of the Kariba Dam, which is co-financed by World Bank and African Development Bank. So here the EU provides basically mainly grant funding, but there's also additional loan funding coming from others. We have calls for proposal, and we have in the pipeline basically the increased access to electricity and renewable energy production project, YARP, in Zambia, under which pilot projects will be developed in different parts of the country after selection of proposals responding to published guidelines. So that's in the pipeline. And then, of course, we have traditional public tendering also of services, works, and supplies. Another example from Zambia would be the ongoing Lusaka transmission and distribution project, where we run a competitive procedure to assign a total of 45 million euro grant by early 2021. This is more the traditional things. And of course, it didn't go unnoticed that we have the European external investment plan within which guarantees are, of course, a very important instrument. And I just want to introduce that. And we have, for example, under this instrument, we have EIB already. EIB is Europe's climate bank now. And we look at the Renew Africa initiative together with EIB, and this project which organized the conference is basically also co-financed through that. So let me briefly talk about the European External Investment Plan. And I think it's very important to highlight the three-pillar approach under that, which responds partly to Christopher's concern, which he expressed. So we have one pillar, which is called the European Fund for Sustainable Development. And this pillar looks very much at the new guarantee to reduce the risk. So that's our de-risking. And it's about blending loans and grants also. And so that's about the de-risking, that's about the loans and the grants. What is important, what comes along in the second pillar is technical assistance, because we cannot go into projects without technical assistance. So we support local authorities and companies to prepare bankable projects. This is again grant funding from the European Union, and it's also to improve the investment climate in close engagement with the private sector. So the European Fund for Sustainable Development, secondly, technical assistance, and the third one, we have to work on the investment climate. And I think Zambia is a very good example for that, that a long way has to go on the investment climate. What does it mean? It involves a structured dialogue with business. It involves some market intelligence and analytics. It includes, of course, policy and political dialogue and our cooperation. So at the end, the EIP is supposed to be a one-stop shop for public and private investors. Now, I come to a few examples, on guarantees which can be tapped in, and I really try to be short on that. Of course, any investment in the future should align very much with the Green Deal, with the Paris Agreement on climate change, and of course, the Agenda 2030, the SDGs. Yeah. At the moment, we have 28 guarantees in place, out of which 7 address sustainable energy and connectivity. Others address small and medium enterprise in agriculture. We also talk about sustainable cities, digitalization, and local currency financing. So on the energy ones, and I just highlight the 2 most important ones, which we use, which are there, which can be used basically to provide, to include liquidity, to pump in liquidity in the renewable energy sector. So out of these 7 guarantee schemes, the most important is possibly, and the biggest one, is the European Guarantee for Renewable Energy. It's together with EIB, with the French AFD, with CDP, and the German KfW. Under this program, we have basically a total of 168 million euro on guarantees, 24 million on technical assistance, and the investment expected is around 3.4 billion euro, basically. So it will address the lack of creditworthiness and delays in payment by off-takers, to create around 12,000 jobs and 2 gigawatt renewable energy capacity in sub-Saharan Africa. The second one is Africa Green Co. Africa Green Co. with AFD. It's smaller, but it's still very significant. The guarantee volume is 28 million euro. TA is only about 1 million, and the investment expected is 450 million. So this is just to show you a few examples. Of course, I said in total there are 7, but for the sake of time, I think there is no need to go into that. You can all find that on the web. But to conclude, basically, we are there with traditional instruments, which are currently in our pipeline also, but we look increasingly, and I say that because we are programming right now our future cooperation with Zambia, but also in the region, because energy issues are very much transboundary, and one has to look into regional approaches. It was mentioned Zambia could become an exporter of energy. So we would look also into that, and yeah, just look it up at the web, and you will find all the details. Type in EU guarantees and you will find all the details on that. Thank you very much, and sorry that you couldn't see me, but I had some technical problems here. Thank you.
It's all right. Thank you so much, Matthias Racing, who is from the European Union delegation. He talks about investment climate being one of the key issues, as well as technical assistance to prepare bankable projects, and the European Fund for Sustainability Development being a key player in this 3-pillar approach. Well, it's now very evident to us that climate change and renewable energy are not issues to be ignored. And from the studies or the findings from the studies, we have seen that Zambia is going to have to diversify to other variable renewable energy sources in addition to hydropower, which consumes the majority of its electricity consumption or generation for that matter, and diversify to other sources like wind and solar that happen to be at a very minute intake. So I would now like to invite our speakers who are going to give us our closing remarks. And I'll start with Giuseppe Montesano, who is the Deputy Director for NL Foundation, to make his remarks as well. Welcome, Giuseppe.
Thank you very much, Joy. Well, let me say first of all that as NL Foundation, we are very, very satisfied of the cooperation with Rest for Africa, Chase, and all the partners for Zambia, and also for the incredible quality and interest of this webinar. I really think that there is not much to add as conclusions. Well, let me say also that as NL Foundation, we are a think tank-like center for strategic studies that, in addition to performing capacity building activities, aims at understanding global trends in the energy domain and providing scientific stimulus to international and local debates. So the project that my colleagues from Chase and NL Foundation presented today is of course fully in line with this mission. And I also hope that it can be a first step towards further developments. What I would like to highlight are a couple of messages that in my view emerge quite clearly from the study and have a more general, broader value, also in light of all that has been said, all the things that have been said today. The first one is that the role of variable renewables can often be larger than expected to build and develop an energy system that optimally fulfills the objectives of providing reliable, affordable, and environmentally sustainable supplies. And in this respect, also interconnections often offer more opportunities than expected. It is, however, clear that related benefits can be fully obtained not only by developing the physical infrastructure, but also cooperation, regulatory, and financial frameworks. One very final point that I think also comes out from the study is that there is a contribution that variable renewables can give to the water energy nexus, thanks to their development combined with the hydro capacity. I will stop there, very conscious of time, and just let me give a very big thanks to all the partners and to all the participants in this meeting. And I think I will now give the floor over again to you, Joy, and then to Roberto. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Giuseppe Montesano, who is the Deputy Director for NL Foundation. Our Secretary General, Roberto Vigorti, is right on standby to give us his closing remarks. Welcome, Mr. Vigorti. We need to unmute yourself.
Thank you so much, Joy. I echo Giuseppe comments. The quality of these workshops has been incredible. I still see there are more than 170 people connected after half an hour more. Only to say three things. The first one is personal. Joy, you may not know, but I was the first boss of Montesano for only 1 year. Really? And then the president of NL, so he was so bright, he took him away. So 1 year only, and then he left because the president of NL wanted him as assistant. So congratulations, Giuseppe, again. Second, all the presentation and also the all the study will be soon on the website, so everybody can download the study, and most important, can download the PDF. This is a characteristic of the foundation. We always provide input, and everybody can download. There is no password. Everybody can download for the benefit of the African country the result. And then, of course, the last thing, thank you, Ambasciatore. I really welcome your initiative, and we are committed to come back to you whenever you want. And thank you to Antonio Passero, who made the work so validly. And next time, see you in Zambia soon, I hope. Ambasciatore, the floor is yours, I think.
All right, Ambassador Antonino Maggiore, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Secretary General. Roberto, thank you for your words and for the great job of you and your team. I have 3 remarks to close our event. The first, I think that the people who were connected and followed our webinar were up to 240. This proves that there is a huge interest in this domain in Zambia, in renewable energies and the opportunities in this market. The second is that I was very impressed by some slides that I saw, not only about the potentials, but also about the fact that Zambia, if we see the maps that were shown by our friends, is one of the few, at the moment, one of the few countries where there is already a lot of work done, and we have already projects that have been implemented. Of course, we hope to see many more countries in Africa involved, but this is to say that there is a clear base in Zambia where we can work on. As our panelists showed, I was very impressed by the remarks about the concrete support that we saw by the European Union, by the World Bank, and I really was impressed also by the Renew Africa initiative. Last remark to close our event is to say that as I was taught in the beginning of my career, it is important always to guarantee the follow-up of an event. And the webinar today doesn't finish now. We are here, the embassy is here, Rest for Africa is here, so we are ready to provide to all the participants and to all those who have questions, information, contacts, so that there can be a follow-up for all those who are interested. And as our Secretary General Vigotti said, we will keep working in view of the next event. So thank you very much for all, and I wish you a good day.
All right, thank you very much, Ambassador. So my take home from all of this is that the exploitation of network interconnection and the cooperation of the national electricity companies will play a key role in the variable renewable energy sources exploitation and the optimal use of energy sources in Southern Africa, which therefore also improves the system resilience in case of extreme climate change conditions. So thank you so much to the Italian Embassy in Zambia for putting this together, and together with the Renewable Energy Solutions for Africa Foundation, and to all the speakers who took time to be patient to talk to the over 200 people participating, and importantly to you, the participants who took time out of your daily schedules to attend this webinar. Much, much appreciated. My name is Joy, and I will see you on the next one, hopefully. Have a good day.
Joy, stay with us. So quickly you will get a master in energy development. If you keep staying with us, we'll learn a lot, and one day we'll give you a master of energy.
Absolutely, an honorary one. I would appreciate that. Well, thank you so much, and have a good day ahead.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.